to the Communication and Education panel. So our first presenter is Gabriela Alejandra Cuevas from the organization COBI. She's going to present technology with a purpose, strengthening the leadership of fishing communities through digital means. Welcome.
¿Me escuchan? Sí, todo bien. Listo, ahora sí, perfecto. Gracias por la presentación. Pues bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Yo sé que es algo complicado regresar a las presentaciones después de la comida, por lo cual pues me gustaría comenzar con un pequeño ejercicio y quiero lanzar dos preguntas a la audiencia que tal vez van a sonar un poco obvias, pero va muy conectado al tema que les quiero presentar el día de hoy, ¿no? Primero que nada, pues me gustaría saber de la audiencia quién tiene un dispositivo móvil o un smartphone. Pues prácticamente el 100%, ¿no? De la audiencia. Y la segunda pregunta va dirigido sobre, por ejemplo, en el evento que tuvimos hace unos años, que fue la pandemia, ¿quién de los presentes tuvo comunicación a distancia, ya sea a través de los mensajes o videollamada, con las comunidades costeras con las que llevaban alguna actividad o algún proyecto? Justo, creo que es menos de la mitad de la audiencia tuvo comunicación con estos colaboradores, ¿no? Entonces, basado pues en las preguntas que les acabo de hacer, nos conecta mucho que a través de la pandemia pues hubo un incremento en la digitalización de actividades y nos evidenció aún más la brecha digital que existen en las comunidades costero-pesqueras. Por ende, pues también debemos retomar el uso efectivo de herramientas tecnológicas con responsabilidad ética y aprendizaje. Comunidad de Biodiversidad, que es la ONG mexicana a la cual yo pertenezco, pues estamos comprometidos en esta transformación digital inclusiva con las comunidades, ya que tenemos que es un enfoque clave para enfrentar los retos del océano y la conservación. Pero cabe aclarar también que en las comunidades hay un proceso de integración de ciertas tecnologías de la información y de comunicación. Hemos observado también que usuarios y pescadores y pescadoras han integrado estas herramientas tecnológicas que van desde dispositivos de GPS, el uso de un dispositivo móvil para poder llevar el registro de sus capturas y evidencia de las mismas, y también se han fortalecido en habilidades administrativas y usos de programas para llevar a cabo pues todo este proceso administrativo de algunos grupos comunitarios y la administración de organizaciones pesqueras. Para ello, cuando nosotros queremos integrar la parte tecnológica, pues es importante también conocer el contexto local con las comunidades con las que colaboramos. Por ello, COBI en el 2022 realizó 600 encuestas a nivel nacional con aquellas comunidades con las que colaboramos y algunas comunidades aledañas, lo cual esta caracterización nos arrojó 5 mensajes clave. Primero, pues aquellos lugares donde cuentan con mayor acceso a Internet desde su dispositivo móvil. También aquellos lugares donde pues son los estados menos digitalizados y son usuarios de canales tradicionales, en donde se localizan el mayor número de personas que cuentan con un dispositivo móvil. Además, aquellas personas que no cuentan con acceso tal vez a un dispositivo o a Internet, pues cuáles son los medios de comunicación mayormente usados para acceder a la información. Y por lo contrario, pues aquellas personas usuarias a dispositivos móviles y con acceso a Internet, pues cuáles son las plataformas o redes sociales más utilizadas. ¿Esto para qué nos ayuda? Esta caracterización nos ayuda para poder encontrar el camino adecuado para compartir pues información y también resultados de nuestros proyectos y que toda la información llegue a todas y todos. Y bueno, COBI, que está comprometido con justo esta parte del proceso de digitalización de manera inclusiva en las comunidades, pues fomentó una estrategia basada en 3 enfoques. La primera es a través de la construcción de una aplicación móvil Pescadata, que más adelante voy a ahondar un poco en ella. La construcción de cursos e-learning que va enfocado pues a las temáticas y necesidades que tengan las comunidades y también pues a través del fortalecimiento de habilidades digitales. Esto va más enfocado a una necesidad específica de los grupos comunitarios con los que colaboramos. El día de hoy les voy a platicar de los primeros 2 enfoques. Pescadata, que es una aplicación móvil gratuita que fue diseñada y co-creada con pescadores y pescadoras de México, más que nada en la región norte del país, y justo surge de la necesidad de llevar el registro y organización de las bitácoras pesqueras para llevar una sistematización adecuada de esta información y contar con los datos al momento. Pero ¿qué pasa? Pues Pescadata evolucionó para poder fortalecer una red de conexión y comunicación entre pescadores y pescadoras, y no solamente de las comunidades, sino también actores que están involucrados en el sector. Además, Pescadata busca también que sea la plataforma para lograr compartir y recibir conocimiento. Si gustan, aquí les dejo los códigos QR. Es una aplicación que está diseñada, dirigida para las comunidades y está en español actualmente y está disponible tanto para Android y para ellos. Si en algún momento tienen alguna duda en específica, con confianza se pueden acercar a mí para resolver cualquier duda. El otro enfoque que les quiero platicar el día de hoy es justo sobre la construcción de estos cursos e-learning. Pero bueno, hablando un poco sobre la caracterización que hicimos a nivel nacional, también a través de los 26 años que tiene la organización, pues se identificaron 4 temas importantes para poder transformar los proyectos que en su momento ya lograron un impacto positivo en las comunidades y a pues los grupos comunitarios con los que colaboramos. ¿Cómo hacemos para que estos proyectos escalen hacia otras comunidades, a otros países y que esas experiencias e información pues sea integrado a través de otras instituciones? Entonces, en COVID identificamos 4 temas importantes. Uno es referente a la pesca sostenible, sobre igualdad de género, soluciones financieras para el sector pesquero y zonas de refugio pesquero. Estos 4 temas son actualmente los cursos que tenemos vigentes en la plataforma. Posiblemente el tema que necesitábamos como mayor retroalimentación de la comunidad, pues era el tema de soluciones financieras para el sector pesquero. Entonces, para lograr eso, se realizaron talleres participativos con las comunidades para poder validar la currícula, es decir, los temas necesarios para poder transformarlos de manera digital y también, pues, saber el cómo y qué necesitamos para que tengan un mayor impacto y que pueda llegar, pues, ahora sí que el mensaje claro a través de la digitalización de este tema. Y aprovechamos este momento también para recibir retroalimentación de los cursos existentes para poder mejorar aún más cada uno de estos cursos e-learning. Bueno, algo que inició a nivel nacional, pues nos dimos cuenta pues que el objetivo se está cumpliendo, ya que estos cursos han sido también adoptados en otros países de América Latina y han llegado y ya traspasado el continente de América. Un poco de números en términos de la adopción de estos cursos. El curso de pesca sostenible y el curso de navegando aguas de igualdad, que es referente al tema de igualdad de género, pues se lanzó el año pasado, a mediados del año pasado, y para el de pesca sostenible actualmente se tienen 590 personas inscritas y tiene un porcentaje alto de finalización del mismo, el 39%, y ha escalado a 17 países. Principalmente las personas que están inscritas son de México, Perú, España, Colombia y Argentina. Para el curso de Navegando Aguas de Igualdad tenemos ya 360 personas inscritas con una finalización del curso de 25% y ha escalado a 13 países, correspondiente mayormente a México, Perú, Chile, Argentina y Guatemala. Estos 2 últimos cursos, el referente a soluciones financieras para el sector pesquero y sobre el tema de zonas de refugio pesquero, fue lanzado apenas este año, hace 2 meses, y hemos observado pues la adopción pues ha incrementado, ¿no? Hicimos como el corte de caja, el análisis de las personas que se están inscribiendo y están finalizando el curso, pues pues tenemos una finalización del 14% del mismo y ya ha escalado a otros países que principalmente son de México, Chile, Chile, España y Guatemala. Referente al curso de zonas de refugio pesquero justo, también tenemos el número de 57 personas con una finalización alta del 32% y con países inscritos desde México, Argentina, Guatemala y Perú. Y bueno, ya para cerrar este tema en términos de cómo integrar la parte tecnológica a nuestras iniciativas y actividades con las comunidades costero-pesqueras, pues es importante enfocarnos en tres bases. Uno, estas herramientas y estas dinámicas deben partir desde un diseño participativo para lograr ahora sí la adopción efectiva en las comunidades y compartir de manera adecuada ese conocimiento. Dos, pues todo el diseño que se crea a partir de tal vez una aplicación móvil, un curso o alguna plataforma, pues debe ser adaptada al contexto comunitario. Y además, vinculado un poco a la parte de los cursos e-learning, pues toda la información de la información que se contenga en esos cursos, pues debe tener contenido local para lograr pues una adopción efectiva de ese conocimiento. Les comparto el código QR, igual son cursos gratuitos, ustedes pueden acceder a través de la plataforma y encontrarán estos 4 cursos vigentes para que ustedes puedan explorar la información. Tal vez nuestro público objetivo es dirigido a las comunidades costero-pesqueras, pero eso no quiere decir que limitemos la transferencia de conocimiento a otras personas de la sociedad civil, instituciones académicas o gubernamentales. Y pues por el momento sería todo. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Gabriela. Tal vez puedas regresar al código QR de la aplicación por si alguien lo quiere escanear. ¿Y hay alguna pregunta? Está el otro micrófono.
Hola, no recuerdo si lo mencionaste, pero te pregunto, ¿cuáles han sido los mayores retos con los usuarios, especialmente con pescadores y pescadoras que a veces son un poquito mayores? ¿Y cuáles han sido y cómo los han trabajado?
Ok, gracias por la pregunta. Bueno, va a depender mucho también de digamos, de la plataforma, porque el enfoque que tiene el curso y el enfoque que tiene la aplicación móvil, muchas veces las personas que son, digamos, pues, más avanzada edad, posiblemente tienen una barrera más, ¿no? Para la adopción de la tecnología. Pero, ¿qué pasa? En el proceso de adopción y difusión de Pescadata, nosotros identificamos también en las comunidades y en las cooperativas pesqueras, pues que existen jóvenes o tal vez mayormente mujeres que son más, pues tienen fortalecido más la habilidad del uso de la tecnología. Por eso no quiere decir que existan también como líderes comunitarios, edad más avanzada, que puedan ser como estos líderes que puedan difundir el cómo se emplean estas tecnologías, ¿no? Entonces es así como nosotros hemos fortalecido también agentes de cambio a nivel comunidad para poder transferir estas tecnologías, ¿no? Y lograr mayor la adopción. Ujú.
Muchas gracias, Gabriela. Now we welcome our next presentation. Our next presenter is Makeda Serju. She's from the Perry Institute, and she's going to present about sharks and tourism coexisting beneath the waves. Welcome, Makeda.
Buenas tardes a todos. Good evening, everyone. My name is Makeda Serju, and today we're going to talk about something you either really love or something you're either really scared of, and that's, of course, sharks. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Makeda Serju, and I work for the Perry Institute for Marine Science, and with the help of Dr. Karlisa Callwood, I have the privilege of presenting a project that investigates the perceptions of locals and tourists in the Bahamas regarding sharks. So as we all know, sharks have always had a pretty damaging perception as man-eaters, which is largely due to media depiction. In a study done by Lebusque and Litfield, they analyzed 109 movies that portrayed human and shark interactions. Unfortunately, they found that 96% of the movies negatively portrayed sharks. A fun fact is that the one movie that positively portrayed sharks was Finding Dory. Now, you may be curious why I selected the Bahamas for this project. For those who don't know, the Bahamas actually used to be called Bahamar, which in Spanish translates to shallow seas. The Bahamas is renowned for its stunning, crystal clear waters, and is arguably some of the most beautiful waters in the world. And this boosts a fantastic tourism sector. In fact, tourism is the leading industry here, contributing to 70% of the nation's GDP. However, recent years, there has been concern about negative shark interactions between humans and sharks. Specifically, there have been approximately 12 attacks over the 7 years, and these were primarily involving tourists. This attention has led to the reconsideration of the shark protection sanctuary that exists within our archipelago. This led me to ask the question, what is the perception of sharks in the Bahamas? Do tourists fear them? Do they still want to come to the Bahamas? Do Bahamians think it's beneficial to have them protected? So in order to answer these questions, we decided to utilize a social science critical discourse analysis methodology to explore how communication happens in specific contexts. Specifically for our project, we applied CDA to analyze social media conversations about shark-related interactions in the Bahamas. This approach helps us to understand how people discuss and perceive these interactions online. Additionally, we conducted a pilot survey with about 32 participants. The survey focused on local perceptions of sharks, their significance to the ecosystem, and the effectiveness of the shark sanctuary. These insights are crucial as they shed light on how sharks are perceived locally, which can be quite different from the global perceptions influenced by media. So let's dive into the social media aspect of our analysis. On social media platform Facebook, the term Shark Bahamas was searched, and the 4 top posts were selected. The term shark was also searched in a hotel discussion group, and then these 4 top posts were also selected. Then finally, the term Shark Bahamas was searched on Facebook and Instagram, and the top shark awareness posts were analyzed and compared. At the end, I had about 478 comments that I had to analyze. What we're doing here is social media discourse analysis. This helps us to understand how people talk about and perceive sharks in the Bahamas and on social media platforms like Facebook. By analyzing these discussions, we gain insight into public perceptions and how these might influence or reflect broader societal views. This is crucial to understanding the impact of social media on tourism and conservation efforts. As we delve deeper in our social media discourse analysis, I'll highlight the top tones we found in the comments regarding sharks in the Bahamas. Firstly, empathy emerged as the dominant sentiment, with 18% of comments showing compassion and understanding. Informative comments followed at 11, where users shared factual insights, well, not factual insights, just insights about sharks. And this shows a clear interest in sharing the knowledge regarding sharks. Additionally, critical and curious tones also emerged at 8% and 7%. And these comments often question the actions or behaviors related to the shark interactions, showcasing a diverse range of opinions and inquiries. So let's examine some specific examples. So one comment here extends condolences to a family who was affected by the tragedy, while another criticizes those who responded insensitively. These comments highlight the emotional engagement and varied perceptions found in discourse. As I mentioned earlier, shark awareness posts made by a tourist and a Bahamian local were chosen for comparison. And as you can see from the analysis, individuals appreciated and responded positively to the post about shark awareness. You can also see with the yellow graph that they were also more positive towards the Bahamian author. So these type of posts are instrumental in raising awareness and fostering understanding of sharks, and it is important to note the value of these posts for changing perceptions. So now we're going to move on to the survey data. In the first part of the project, we wanted to understand discourse around shark interactions in the Bahamas. But for the survey, we wanted to understand what locals thought of sharks in the Bahamas and how they interacted with them and how effective they thought the shark ban was in their country. So the demographic results showed that most respondents were relatively young, female, and resided in the Bahamas. Regarding perceptions, as you can see, when we asked them which word like they associated with sharks, it was mostly fearful. When asked about about influences on shark perceptions, majority agreed that media had a large influence, and this was followed by personal interest. For this question, we wanted to know if individuals had ever had an in-person physical experience with a shark, and if so, how this reaction affected their perception. And it was how they reacted during this experience. And it was pleasing to see that most respondents either reacted calmly or positively during these experiences. Additionally, we found that after their initial experience, respondents were less fearful. For this question, a Likert scale was used to assess the perceived importance, 1 being extremely important and 5 stating that the sharks serve no role in the marine environment. And as you can see here, most respondents thought that sharks were either extremely important to the marine environment or important to the marine environment. When asked about possible consequences of removing sharks from Bahamian waters, most respondents agreed that the ecosystem imbalance would be the greatest consequence. We also specifically asked about the shark ban. We wanted to know if Bahamians thought the protection of shark was creating an uncontrolled abundance of sharks, which could have been viewed as a problem, as this was an anecdotal thing that we perceived in the field during our studies. However, a majority of respondents agreed that the Bahamas does not have a shark problem. Majority of respondents also agreed that the sanctuary is beneficial to the Bahamas, but as you can see here, some respondents were unaware that it had already been established. So what does all of this mean? Well, from the social media discourse analysis data, we can see that there was a willingness to provide information on shark-related matters. And respondents also were very appreciative for shark awareness posts, which indicates an interest for the post. A study by Ostrovsky also showed that information can lower fear perceptions associated with sharks. With this being stated, more informative shark awareness posts like this one by a local renowned shark expert, Andrés Musgrove, could be beneficial for destigmatizing sharks and promoting shark conservation. Let's talk about how perceptions are formed. Initially, many people fear sharks, but direct experiences can help reduce this fear. However, media also plays a significant role here. Many respondents indicated that media was the most influential factor shaping their perception of sharks, even negative, widespread perception, which aligns with the scientific research. On the positive note, this study, along with others, shows that experiences and education are powerful tools that can help dispel these engraved fears and foster a more informed view of sharks. It's a reminder of the importance of firsthand experiences and learning in changing perceptions. In regards to the Bahamian perception on local sharks, a remarkable 84% of Bahamians recognize the critical role sharks play in the marine environment, and 88% support the shark sanctuary, showcasing a strong community backing for conservation efforts. Now imagine, this industry also contributes millions of dollars annually, economically. This isn't just an economic boon, it's a testimony to how ecological preservation can drive economic prosperity. Additionally, a recent study by McDonald's, Makeda, and Wester highlighted the ban on extractive shark practices such as finning and trade of shark products is deemed the most crucial conservation policy. This ban is not only pivotal, but also beneficial for the economic and ecologic growth of the Bahamas. Sorry. So for future research, looking to the future with, of course, more funding, we hope to produce more studies that investigate local perceptions on frequent shark encounters with tourists, the tourist perceptions of sharks in the Bahamas, and awareness levels regarding local shark protection. As current legislation is also under review, so more work like the conservative post that Andrés Musgrove had uploaded would be very beneficial to these conservation efforts. And as we conclude, respondents expressed empathy. They were very interested in these shark posts. And there was, as we saw earlier, a positive reaction from respondents regarding shark awareness. However, we've seen that experience paired with education can be very crucial for the conservation and the preservation of various shark species in the Bahamas. These are my references. And are there any questions? I don't know. Do you do that?
Thank you. Perfect timing. Now we have the space for questions.
Hi, this is great. I have a question. So just about for curiosity, those attacks, you say 12 attacks in 7 years, have been associated to touristic shark diving?
Yeah, we've noticed that a lot of them happen during tourist activities. It's very rare to hear of a local getting attacked. Of the very few that we found, it's usually during something like spearfishing, which is known to attract sharks. But yeah.
No, but I mean like diving with sharks. Do they have diving with sharks activities?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so those were in those instances.
Some of them were diving in sharks. We had an encounter on a hotel named Atlantis where it was a confined aquarium where you actually dive with sharks, not wild sharks. We've had one where they're in the wild, like just paddle boarding, very random, but then it would be on tourists. Okay. So it'd be very interesting to do further studies to observe why are tourists getting attacked rather than locals who are always in these waters.
They smell them. Thank you. No meat.
Yes, yes.
Other question? Related to that, because you mentioned that they're more related with tourism. Is there any, as an organization, is there any connection or you try to connect with that touristic agencies to see that it's related with bad practices from the guides or something like that?
So that post by Andrés Musgrove was very informative. One of the things he highlighted was feeding grounds, because there are some spots where people go to clean their fish, and that could be attracting the sharks. But they need to make a map of those areas so that the tourist people don't go back there, because I think that could be what's causing it. You know, you dump your fish here, and then 2 hours later, people are going snorkeling in that area, and then there's an attack. Yeah.
Thank you, Makeda. So our next presenter is Danielle Cartwright. She's also from the Perry Institute. She's going to present Assessing the Impact of Capacity Building Programs in Marine Conservation, a case study from the Bahamas. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Danielle Cartwright, and I'm the Education Coordinator at the Perry Institute for Marine Science. And today we will be discussing the assessment of the impact of capacity building programs in the field of marine conservation in the Bahamas. The Community Conservation Education and Action Department, or the CCA department, at the Perry Institute for Marine Science focuses on local capacity building in the Bahamas. This study analyzes that gap between the mid and long-term impacts of the participants' professional and personal development. We will focus on the two annual programs we have here at Perry Institute, the Rising Tides program for our high schoolers and the summer internship program targeted towards college freshmen and recent graduates. Format included a cross-sectional survey and included questions such as open-ended questions, yes, no, maybe questions, and Likert scale questions with 1 representing little to no influence or impact, whereas 5 represented extremely influential or extremely impactful. Starting with our high school program, Rising Tides. Piloted in 2022, the target audience is Bahamian students between grades 10 to 12 who are interested in learning more about the field of marine conservation. The program objectives are to foster marine science interest, build knowledge and skills, and to expose students to marine conservation careers in the Bahamas, utilizing PIMS's resources while doing it. A key goal to note is that we want to instill environmental stewardship and national pride within these students. Moving on to outcomes, mid to long-term outcomes that directly apply to this study includes increased conservation behaviors and contributions, additional dive certifications, demonstration of field and research skills, an interest and pursuit of marine conservation education, and understanding the attainability of said education and jobs in this field. From the 7 respondents, the academic levels range from the 11th grade to college seniors, with all college students who responded studying marine science. So this indicates a strong pipeline into this field with our participants afterwards. The program significantly influenced participants' study choices, with most rating its impact as a 3 or higher out of 5, with several actually rating it a 5. They highlighted hands-on field experience as crucial in understanding the profession, and for some, it solidified or decided their pursuit of marine science. When asked how useful information learned during the program was for their academic work, responses averaged a 4 out of 5, demonstrating its strong overall value. Skills learned and confidence gained were also highly rated, mostly 4s and 5s. Key skills included species identification, data collection, and communication skills. Moving on to additional opportunities since the program. Students stated that the Rising Tides program provided moderate to strong access to additional opportunities at an average of 3.57 out of 5. Students felt more recognized and supported. One of these examples is that a past participant successfully joined the World Ocean Day Youth Advisory Council through program experience and faculty recommendations. Regarding environmental stewardship, all respondents reported strengthened or deepened environmental respect, with those who already identified as environmental stewards gaining new appreciation and awareness. This aligns with the program's goal of fostering environmental stewardship. Regarding current and future involvement in the field, the program inspired increased involvement in other initiatives, with most ratings between 4 and 5 out of 5. Participants stated heightened motivation to join eco clubs, science programs, and cleanups, with increased confidence to lead or facilitate new groups. One quote said, "Rising Tides helped me to build confidence in myself as a leader, and I wanted to give others an experience like that. This led to me participating in leading clubs that would help others to build knowledge and confidence." When asked about their self-perception in conservation careers, participants gave powerful responses such as, I feel more certain that this is the field where I belong. Another said, it makes it feel more attainable because I didn't think that this was something I was able to do, but now I know that I can pursue this goal. While another quote said, rising tides is what really sparked my interest in marine conservation education. It made me realize that my way of contributing to the fight for the environment would be through educating others in any capacity that I can. The last question asked to the Rising Tiders is, if they could tell the public about one thing from the program, what would it be? The overall message is generally consistent in that the program was worth it. Quotes include, don't be afraid to join or volunteer, even if you're just curious. It was one of the best opportunities I've had, the experience of a lifetime. Other responders emphasized that they felt it was a safe space, and not only to build community and confidence, but also skills and scientific knowledge. In summary, these responses show us that Rising Tides indeed acts as a catalyst for young people in the Bahamas who are interested in the field of marine science and conservation. It is proving to be useful in shaping academic pathways while building technical and transferable skills. Next, we will move on to the summer internship program. The program's funding is prioritized for Bahamian students, ensuring access to training and experience regardless of personal circumstance. Interns are placed in departments based on their interests and skills, following a mentor-mentee model, and participate in weekly skill building sessions for professional development, as well as dive training. Short-term outcomes we've previously seen include increased marine conservation knowledge, threat understanding, research, communication, and diving skills, career awareness and interest, as well as self-confidence. However, the midterm outcomes applicable to this study include an increase in conservation behaviors, use of research skills, earning of additional dive certification, expansion of networks, while long-term outcomes include an increase of Bahamian youth in this field, advanced dive certification, and local hires in conservation. Our study gathered 10 responses for the internship survey, ranging from college seniors to PhD students to early career professionals. Participants rated the internship's influence on their academic direction with an average of 3.9 out of 5 on the Likert scale. Skills learned were rated highly useful, with data collection, literature review skills, and social science skills frequently mentioned as still relevant in current studies and careers. Transferable skills like teamwork, communication, and time management also scored high with an average of 4.4. Technical skills gained, such as data collection, field methods, data analysis, and species ID, showed long-term impact, with most responses rating their continued use at 4 to 5 years later, which is present day. Valuable skills gained included both technical skills such as dive training, coral identification, coral disease assessment, data analysis, data coding, and professional skills such as scientific communication, resume/CV building, grant writing, and team collaboration. Confidence in field settings also significantly improved. The internship helped participants to secure jobs with an average response of 4. One intern was directly employed by our organization, hi Makeda, while others found the internship strengthened their resumes, enhancing their competitive edge and confidence in interviews and networking. The majority also felt the program provided a competitive advantage for jobs, other internships, graduate studies, particularly in their interview skills. Tangible opportunities included jobs within our organization or other local organizations, new research collaborations, and thesis projects. Responders also stated that the program expanded their professional networks in marine conservation. Participants expressed passionate long-term views on marine conservation, including a deeper appreciation for the marine environment, a shift to interdisciplinary thinking and renewed activism. Quotes revealed increased environmental awareness, personal purpose, and national responsibility. 80% of responders remained involved in marine conservation efforts, engaging in activities like beach cleanups, mangrove planting, and volunteering, while some pursuing related careers or teaching others. Finally, when asked what is one message they'd like to tell the public, nearly all participants highly recommended the internship, describing it as a transformative stepping stone for career growth, providing exposure to various sectors, hands-on research skills, and an introduction to the field. Finally, we will assess the bridge between the two programs. Since 2024, PIMS has observed the transition of several students from rising tiders to summer interns. 3 such individuals provided feedback, highlighting the program's capacity building success in the Bahamas. Participants rated the Rising Tides program highly for preparing them for the internship, giving it a 4.33 out of 5, providing a strong foundation in marine conservation. The internship expanded on this, developing skills in species ID, conservation education, science communication, social science skills, and dive certifications. All participants scored a perfect 5 when asked how both programs influenced their academic or career paths, stating it provided a stronger foundation and solidified their direction in conservation. They also saw long-term benefits like career opportunities from dive certification, increased confidence, community building, and networking. The program solidified their career choices in conservation, with one realizing a desire to become a marine science educator, while others saw themselves actively contributing to conservation through direct action. Critically, all felt as though they would have missed out, quote unquote, if they had only completed one program as opposed to both. One realized their passion for marine science education through both, stating, "I would have pursued another science with only the internship." Another stated that they wouldn't have been involved in mangrove research or partnered with conservation organizations. Others felt they would have had a quote unquote childlike view of marine conservation with only the youth program, or missed foundational knowledge with only the internship. The study has shown us here at PIMS the mid to long-term impact that our programs have on the participants. As we were able to analyze the pipeline from high school to tertiary learning to early level professionals, it is without a doubt that youth capacity building in this field should be prioritized within the national system, not only in the Bahamas, but in small island developing states overall. Special thanks to my mentor, Dr. Karlisa Callwood. Thank you for your attention, and that is the end of my presentation.
We have time for questions.
Thank you. It's a really inspiring presentation.
Thank you.
Great to see, Bahamians being involved. A question was, geographic focus of your program, does it extend? I know Bahamas has got, multiple islands. Does it extend to any of those outer islands where, opportunities may be harder to come by?
So that is not something that's currently in action, but it is something that we plan to implement in the future with additional resources, capacity, and funding. But that is something that we would like to execute in the very near future. So it is something on the horizon, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Great program, by the way.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Do they get any credit, like school credits or college credits for the courses or internships?
I do believe that it is a part of our national university system, that there is a credit system built into it. However, I cannot confirm that right now. What I can do is get back to you after this presentation. But we do work closely with our national, local tertiary system, but I can't confirm if the credit system is still is actually active. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle, for your presentation. Now we welcome Karlisa Callwood, also for Perry Institute. She's going to present about using mangrove stories of change to identify values and priorities for restoration. Welcome, Karlisa.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karlisa Callwood. I'm also with the Perry Institute for Marine Science, where I lead the education, outreach, and social science research for our organization. The presentation that I'll be giving today on mangrove stories of change continues on work shared during the poster session on Tuesday by SEP from the Environmental Defense Fund on restoring and prioritizing mangrove creeks in the Bahamas for restoration. What I'll share today is just a small subset of that work focused specifically on engaging the community to understand their perspectives and values related to those creeks. So this work was part of a multi-year project to complete a comprehensive assessment of the locations and types of mangrove creek blockages, as well as to prioritize those sites for future restoration efforts. As part of that project, we also leveraged community shared stories of environmental changes in their local mangrove areas to help identify values related to mangroves, potential social impacts of mangrove degradation and restoration, and to better understand how the community might prioritize these sites, recognizing that their priorities might differ greatly from those of the researchers and practitioners working on the project. The goal here is not only to highlight the importance of community input, but also to demonstrate how narrative-driven data can help to shape the focus and implementation of restoration efforts by incorporating community opinions, perspectives, and feedback throughout the life cycle of the project. So why stories or community narratives? Well, community narratives, including personal and shared experiences, can offer a rich exploration of the social, cultural, and emotional contexts that help frame the changes and impacts that these communities have experienced. These stories also provide insight into the cultural and socio-historical layers that are very often embedded into environmental changes, aiding in preserving meaningful insights that are often missing from ecological, biological, or physical data. Stories can also help explain how people interpret and live with the environmental changes they experience. And these types of stories also help to document how communities see or position themselves within their environments in terms of space and place. And lastly, people tend to be more comfortable sharing stories as opposed to answering interview or survey questions. So as I often tell my team, if you want to do this work, you have to get real comfortable with rejection, because people often say no when you ask them about interviews. But we found that if we reframe those interviews as asking people to share stories about their experiences as instead, they don't feel like they have to give a quote unquote expert opinion for your question. So to do this, we conducted community interviews reframed as collecting stories. And we did this with individuals from New Providence, Eleuthera, and Andros, who were asked to share stories about the changes they've seen in their local mangrove ecosystems over the past decade. We collected narratives from 58 respondents across these 3 islands, and individuals were asked to consider why mangroves are important to them, how they've used mangrove areas in their communities, factors contributing to the changes they've seen, and how these changes have impacted them and their community. These responses were then coded using grounded theory to identify key themes related to those considerations, and also to get a general understanding of how respondents value mangrove ecosystems in those areas. So to give you a sense of these stories, I'll share 3 that were collected, one from each island. This first story comes from a male fisher from Eleuthera. Well, you know, as a kid growing up, the mangroves were much more than what we see now. They were more lush and greener and everything. They didn't have any meaning to me at all at the time. Then I became an adult and I realized the importance of them. As a kid, we fished. There were tons of fish hanging around the mangrove and we brought them home by the bucket. And today you cannot find that. I assume that this is because this is due to a lot of fishing or the collapse of many of the mangroves that would have been seen in the area at the time. Now I'm realizing the importance of mangroves being a habitat for juvenile fish. The thing that I have noticed is that they want mangrove areas to be bulldozed and become residential areas, which I think is a huge mistake. I have now seen the dying of mangroves and the excavation of mangroves by people using it as a landmark to fill in and build homes. I'm thinking about what I would have done as a kid because my kids, my grandkids love boating. I don't think they'll be a fisher like I am, but even if they aren't, the mangroves supply the fish and they won't have anything for the future. The second story comes also from a fisher from Andros. In the north central area, there are some places where you would see the mangroves dying due to a lack of water flow, chemicals, or different species of mangroves taking over. I think mangroves need to be managed just like everything else. The blockage in Stanyard Creek is due to the hurricane in 1979. If you look at the water near us, it's not completely clear because it's not getting flushed. Some species don't do well in brackish waters, so they go somewhere else. Growing up, I spent a lot of time diving off the mangrove system. We used to see seahorses. I used to be able to show students, but this creek has really become stagnant. And the third story comes from a younger fisherman in New Providence. I feel that without mangroves, we wouldn't be what we are. So you have a household with a mother, father, and generations. The mangrove are the mothers. They depend on this place. If you take them away, what happens? What acts as the lungs of the ocean? It's common sense. They are being destroyed, hurting it, destroying it, killing it. It's so bad. I think it's all the killing I'm most depressed about. Then you have people coming there and just messing it all up. It trickles down. It's going to impact commercial fishing, climate change, hurricanes, and all that. You got politicians getting dirty money in their pockets. You have people in power who know nothing about the environment. So let's dive into a couple of the key themes that we were able to pull from these stories. So the first is that respondents were primarily using these mangrove areas for fishing, some for subsistence fishing, some for flats fishing or fly fishing, but many are also using these areas as storage for their boats during storms or for recreational activities. As one stated, it's where you learn to swim and snorkel. In regard to changes in the mangroves, the majority of the respondents, particularly those from Andros, stated that they had noticed a decrease in mangrove-related species. We used to see bait mullets, bonefish, tarpon, Nassau grouper, different species of parrotfish and angelfish. Triggerfish used to venture in when I dived and snorkeled when I was younger. Another change that many respondents noticed was related to coastal development, with one respondent from Eleuthera mentioning that they had seen mangroves being bulldozed for the construction of residential areas. Third, the majority of respondents attributed changes seen to mangroves to development. One participant from Eleuthera expressed frustration about how in one location where development was occurring, the digging taking place resulted in mud and water clogging the nearby channel. They also mentioned that some of these changes have been due to shifts in the water flow. In some cases, the flow is blocked, resulting in stagnant, smelly water and or flooding near residential waters. And the last key theme I'll share today is that respondents also believe these changes to mangroves are greatly impacting their livelihoods, whether those are impacts to their commercial fishing harvests or their bonefish lodges. But most importantly, they worry about these changes leading to further destruction of these natural areas and continual loss of access to certain areas that remain blocked. During the summer months, the fish are dying out because there is no flow, no oxygen, one fisher said. So these stories of change collected across these three islands reveal the powerful role of community narratives in shaping mangrove conservation and restoration. The narratives frequently conveyed emotions like grief, anger, and fear about the changes respondents were seeing. Respondents also spoke of mangroves not only as ecological resources, but as deeply personal and cultural landmarks. Many tied their narratives directly to personal impacts, such as their childhood memories, the livelihoods of their families, as well as their community identity. They also included the sentiment that there are strong concerns that the next few generations may not have the chance to experience these spaces in the same ways their parents and grandparents did if the levels of degradation are to continue. Many also described witnessing important changes in these mangrove areas that they believe will have a direct impact to their communities. This includes the decline of mangrove and mangrove-associated species due to die-offs, changes to water flow that create sedimentation buildup and contribute to stagnant water, and increasing development pressures over time that ultimately lead to more degradation. Androsians in particular emphasize that creek blockages not only contribute to declines in tarpon and bonefish, but also limit their access to traditional bonefishing areas, both of which will decrease the revenues of bonefish guides and the bonefish lodges over time. Many also see these impacts as a direct threat, not only to their human communities, but the ecological communities as well, with several respondents recognizing the importance of mangroves in fostering ecological connectivity between all the Bahamian islands. These stories shared also conveyed frustrations with governance, planning, and development decisions that failed to consider the environmental and social consequences of removing and/or changing these areas. Respondents pointed to development pressures like new gated communities and poorly placed roads with limited environmental regulatory oversight or long-term considerations as key drivers of mangrove degradations and restricted water flow in these blocked areas. This highlights a disconnect between top-down decision-making and infrastructure development with the on-the-ground realities that residents in these areas have to contend with. Similarly, there were many concerns also raised about the increased number of development projects that continue to occur on all three islands, even in the face of continued environmental disruption. So in conclusion, stories like these can serve as credible lived knowledge that captures the emotional, cultural, and place-based dimensions of a community's experience and help explain how people interpret and live with environmental change. Ultimately, this work underscores the need for equitable, community-informed approaches to conservation, where local voices are centered and treated as expert knowledge alongside that of scientists, researchers, and conservation practitioners. This allows restoration efforts to become more adaptive, effective, and just. This work also serves as a powerful reminder that the future of critical ecosystems like mangroves can't be based solely on the ecological concerns, but must also include economic, social, and cultural considerations as well. So thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to give thanks to our collaborators on this project, the Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources, the Bahamas Sports Fishing Association, the Environmental Defense Fund, and Russell Craig and Associates. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for questions.
Hi, thanks so much. That was so cool. I was wondering if you share any of that information from those stories with other organizations in the Bahamas to help them inform like management decisions or to help inform policy decisions, zoning for protected spaces or things like that.
Yeah, so all of this work was put into a guide as well as a roadmap for future restoration that we actually just completed this about 3 weeks ago. So it will be shared with government and other organizations. And one of the hopes is that we can use similar stories like this for communication campaigns so that other folks can hear from people from their own communities about why this work is important.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you.
Great presentation. Thank you for that. Did you get a sense from the participants how they found the story-led research from a participant perspective, as opposed to surveys, which can be quite extractive?
Well, considering that we collected 56 interviews over 3 weeks, when usually when we spend a week on each island to do this type of data collection, Makeda and I, we usually talk to 8 people in a week. So we found that reframing this as stories, as opposed to can we interview you about X, really made people open to sharing at a different level than they were when we just asked them about interviews or surveys. So we felt like that it was a big difference for us in terms of the data collection. Yeah.
Okay. And just very quickly, did you see any difference in the responses from the participants? Like, for example, if younger people have different perceptions?
No, we didn't quite see big differences in terms of age. Most of the differences that we saw were between island. So depending on what island they're from, they focused on different priorities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karlisa.
Thank you very much.
Now we welcome Sietske Vanderwall. Is here. I hope that I pronounce it well. She's going to present about turning the tide, building local capacity for coral and mangrove restoration in Aruba. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It's Sietske van der Wal. It's a very Dutch name, but I'm born and raised in Aruba, which I'll be talking about. Very much appreciate the opportunity to be here to present on this pilot project that's basically just the beginning, planting the seed for something much bigger. Turning the Tide has been a title used by many, many projects, so not to get confused with other projects. This one is about coral restoration, mangrove restoration in Aruba. But today I'd also highlight the capacity building component of this project. So the Turning the Tide was a pilot project that's set up as a pilot project, only the beginning, which was a partnership between our own organization, the Aruba Conservation Foundation, and Wageningen University of the Netherlands, as well as the local University of Aruba and Scubble Bubbles Foundation. So it's 2 NGOs and 2 universities working together, where we have the scientific backing from Wageningen University, but local organizations doing the groundwork and local capacity building as well. So the aim was to look at coastal restoration, what is needed most, and we focused on coral, mangroves, and the capacity building. So when we're looking at coral restoration, where do you start? You start with identifying the problem. What many of you have already seen in the past week, corals are not doing well in the region. So similar for Aruba, we have a graph going downwards, our corals are degrading. But what we've also identified is degraded coral areas. Because of that degradation, they end up in a double negative spiral. There is no stable ground, so you have more turbidity and less stable ground for new corals to grow on, more erosion. And on the other hand, because there are no corals and they are becoming less structures, so less biomass, less fish herbivores to keep the corals that are there healthy and help mitigate algal overgrowth. And therefore, they have 2 threats: no stable ground to grow on and lots of algal overgrowth. So to tackle this in this coral restoration attempt, we said we need to tackle that stable underground and the 3-dimensional structure by introducing artificial reefs. So by introducing the structure, you attract the fish biomass that can help maintain the corals. And at the same time, you also create that stable substrate for corals to grow on. Additionally, just to kickstart coral growth, we'll be planting coral fragments on these structures so that the coral restoration would happen a little bit faster. Before putting artificial reefs into the water, you need to plan and you need to look at where are you going to do this. This was not just our decision. This included stakeholder engagement and really looking at the sites themselves, which are areas that are degraded, that we want to restore, but also historically had the corals that we are trying to restore. We came up with these 3 areas that are under our management in the MPAs of Aruba so that we can also manage the long-term sustainability of these areas. We installed in these areas 2 different artificial reef systems, a concrete system by Reef Systems, they are called Moses blocks, and the Mars Sustainable Solutions System, which is like reef spiders. It's a rebar structure coated with sand and epoxy for easy coral growth. The Moses structures, while they are very stable, very solid, and in our hurricanes, they don't move, they were a big challenge to install because we needed the barge. And we also had the help from our colleagues from Sinapa Bonaire. One of them is here in the room, hopefully. And they helped us move these structures underwater with lift bags to install them on the exact location where we wanted them. The Mars reefs were much easier to install, and also the Mars reefs gave a great opportunity for community engagement as we engaged over 200 volunteers in coding these reef stars. When installing reefs, you also need to maintain them and monitor them. So we had about 30 volunteers trained, including diving training, monitoring training, coral recognition training, all of this happening at the same time so that they could help us monitor the coral reefs. At the same time, we're also preparing coral fragments. So Scubble Bubbles Foundation was able to amplify their nursery to 19 coral trees that produced for this project so far over 1,500 coral fragments to be outplanted on the reefs. Just an idea, these nurseries, they need weekly monitoring. It's a lot of work, and we're very grateful for the big group of volunteers in this project. To monitor the coral reefs and to have an idea of how our reefs are doing, we use an adapted protocol from GCRMN. So we monitor the same parameters as GCRMN, just only on artificial reefs or representative areas nearby, because we need a positive reference and a negative control as well. The idea is not to present big results because it's basically they've been in the water for just 2 years, so it's too early for coral restoration to really present results. But I do want to show you our preliminary results, which for the Mars reefs especially have very, very positive results in the coral cover. The orange being, so that's the first graph on your left, the orange being after 1 year in the water. So these fragments have grown quite a bit. If we're looking at different genotypes, because we used 5 different genotypes, it became very clear that one genotype was not doing well. On certain reefs, this genotype just died completely. So we know that for future, be careful in using that genotype. And we're lucky we have 4 others that are doing much better. If we're looking at the Moses reefs, that's the graph all the way on your right, we notice that while the corals may not be growing as well on there, the fish abundance is highly attracted on that reef. This project was not only coral restoration, but also mangrove restoration, where we looked at what's the biggest threat for our mangroves. In Aruba, that's siltation. So instead of planting mangroves, we're looking at the siltation problem. The mangroves are drying out, and we need to restore our water flow. So the water flow, by increasing our water flow, we hope to restore the nursery function, getting more fish for those artificial reefs. And step 1 in restoring the water flow was introducing silt traps. So in areas where water goes towards the mangroves and crosses a road, it's channeled. So this is where we make a silt trap, so the mud and silt drops and only the water passes to the mangroves. And as we've closed the tap of all this mud going into the mangroves, we also need to restore the water flow by digging channels. So this is one of our Ramsar sites called Spaans Lagoon. And here we have dug mostly mechanically 450 meters of channel. And there are a few areas within the mangroves where we need volunteers. And this is how a CSR program, corporate social responsibility program, has unexpectedly started to develop, with lots of organizations wanting to help us and volunteer for us. They're usually asking for a beach cleanup, but we're saying we need more mangrove digging. And luckily, most of them get excited. We have a very nice program where we offer a presentation at their organization first, and then they come and get dirty in the mud. And we offer it as a free mud spa. Also in this project, as a surprise to ourselves, we intended to have a documentary of about 15 minutes on this project, but this ended up becoming a documentary of 80 minutes, where our local cinemas was planning to show it for 2 weeks. They ended up extending week by week by week due to full theaters, ended up extending it up to 5 weeks. It was sold out all the time. And it came on national television and was shown in the Netherlands at the Film House in The Hague just this week. There's a QR for the documentary. It's free on YouTube. As it was just a pilot, just a start, there's lots more to do: continued monitoring, continued maintenance, and room for expansion in amount of reefs, but also in amount of corals and genotypes that we'll be working with. And there's lots of real other threats to be mitigated and advocated for. Just a little image of what our reefs look like right now for a little bit of hope. So the fragments were about 15 centimeters when we outplanted them. This is in less, I think it's about 1.5 years after. And on some of our artificial reef structures, all the way on your right, you see there's natural recruitment as well. And those photos were taken last Saturday. Really exciting. So this project really showed that with engagement of public and having more helping hands in forms of volunteers, together we can save nature.
Thank you. Questions? I don't see. No. Regarding the plots that you show, I saw that there were some that increase and the other don't. It's more related with the gene type or some environmental thing that happened those years.
So the center plots, those were the genotypes. Depending on the location, that influenced whether it was doing well in that area or not. There was one genotype that didn't do well anywhere. But the majority did show some differences between the locations. This is also why we tested 3 different sites.
Okay. So you have the 5 genes,
5 gene
5
types.
genes in each.
In 3 different
in 3
locations.
different-
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other question?
I saw that you guys were digging trenches and basically trying to restore the hydrology in your mangrove restoration sites. What made you choose that over planting seedlings and the normal or the usual nursery methodology and then planting out?
So it's actually, thank you for the question. In 2017, we tried planting in that same area, even after digging a part of the channel. Those all died. So it became very clear to us that if the hydrology is not in order and the water flow is not there, it doesn't make sense to plant mangroves. It might make sense in an engagement perspective, so engaging the public, as mangrove planting is cute and fun to do. But if you want it to be a success, you need that water flow first. That area was drying out. If we want mangroves to be able to grow there, we need that water flow first. And once we have that, we can always opt for planting still. But it looks like, so in an area where we dug that channel in 2017, there was already natural recruitment of black mangroves happening.
So thank you and congrats for the documentary. So we are moving to our last but not least presentation with Alvaro Andrés Moreno Munar. Yes, he's going to present about bridging language, culture, and ecology, a review of hybridization, ethnotranslation, and biocultural pedagogy in Mesoamerican STEM education. Welcome, Alvaro.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Álvaro Andrés Moreno Munar, en representación de la Conservación Marina Sin Fronteras, Marine Conservation Without Borders, la Asociación de Pescadores del Caribe Pez León. Es todo un gusto estar aquí con ustedes. Entonces, empecemos. Conectando la lengua, cultura y ecología, conocimiento ecológico híbrido y aprendizaje STEAM en Mesoamérica costera. Aquí pues, estamos reunidos a Álvaro Andrés Moreno, Hilario Put, de la asociación Sayat Miats, y Robert Tickfen, fundador de la Conservación Marina Sin Fronteras. Entonces, como introducción, tenemos que, pues, hay brechas en el conocimiento que queremos recortar o disminuir entre las comunidades pesqueras y pues, las investigaciones que se pueden conocer como pues, el conocimiento occidental, todo lo que hemos visto aquí en relación con metodologías, con análisis de datos. Entonces, queremos integrar ese conocimiento ancestral con pues, ese desarrollo de investigaciones pues, para una mejor conservación y desarrollar una metodología que sea pues, replicable aquí en todo el Gran Caribe. Em, Vemos que hay una necesidad de integración, entonces el conocimiento ecológico surge como una importante herramienta para que los proyectos se puedan desarrollar de una forma adecuada a lo largo del tiempo. Entonces, queremos impactar de una forma positiva a estas comunidades costeras. Generalmente son comunidades que tienen relación con pues, conocimientos ancestrales, son comunidades afrodescendientes, comunidades indígenas principalmente. Aquí pues yo traigo un ejemplo. Quiero contarles que la Conservación Marina Sin Fronteras ya en la región de La Guajira, con la comunidad Guayú, tiene su primer trabajo traducido al Guayunaiki. Aquí quiero resaltar que el conocimiento no es solamente científico, estamos rescatando pues la lengua, identificando las culturas, identificando sus conocimientos, integrándolo a los proyectos. Aquí pues aquí lo hemos denominado diálogo de saberes, la participación comunitaria, el aprendizaje basado en la comunidad. Aquí pues resalto las comunidades guayú pues tienen un conocimiento muy relacionado con las pesquerías, entonces nos ha permitido desarrollar unos nuevos temas de investigación, sobre todo en la conservación pues de estas pesquerías e incluso los ambientes. Em, Aquí, pues, dentro de la fase de implementación y las herramientas que hemos venido utilizando a través del proyecto, pues iniciamos con el diagnóstico participativo. Vemos que es la herramienta común en casi todos los proyectos. Me alegró mucho. O sea, a través de las entrevistas con las comunidades, identificando sus problemáticas, viendo posibles soluciones, integrándolo pues a los proyectos. Entonces, vimos que el material educativo es la herramienta para vincular a los estudiantes en estas nuevas alternativas de conservación. O sea, los estudiantes aquí que tienen como lenguaje pues sus dialectos locales, ya pueden conocer nuevas estrategias, digamos, de conservación, de restauración, de la investigación que actualmente viene desarrollándose en temas como el cambio climático, como la formulación de nuevos proyectos, la integración a nuevas herramientas de participación en la investigación. Entonces, aquí también hemos desarrollado los talleres de capacitación, herramienta que seguramente vamos a continuar implementando. Aquí ya vemos nuevas relaciones que vamos a establecer, ojalá. Em, como del modelo educativo para las comunidades, rescatamos o quiero resaltar que este proyecto inició pues con una comunidad muy importante en en el país de México o en Belice, en la comunidad de Quintana Roo. Tenemos pues ya nuestro primer piloto donde hemos obtenido los mejores resultados, ya integrando pues a la comunidad maya. Ha sido pues nuestro trabajo eh, pues más digamos conocido. Ya les mostraré dónde pueden encontrar todo el material. Eh, pues dentro de las políticas que hemos integrado al proyecto, resaltamos pues la Convención de Cartagena, desarrollada en 1983, los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible 4, 13, 14, que están relacionados pues con el cambio climático, con la educación y la vida submarina, y el marco de la biodiversidad de UICN, que tiene en su meta 22 relación con la educación inclusiva y el respeto a los saberes indígenas y locales. Una herramienta pues que nos permite desarrollar todo este contexto con las comunidades. Entonces, pues el modelo de México en Quintana Roo también está muy vinculado Bélice en esta iniciativa, porque pues es una zona de frontera, pues bueno, se define, pero pues ahí está la zona marina que pues se integra pues a estos dos países principalmente. Aquí resaltamos nuevamente las alianzas estratégicas entre la Conservación Marina Sin Fronteras, Marine Conservation Without Borders, los servicios educativos de Quintana Roo, la Universidad Intercultural Maya de Quintana Roo y pues la colaboración con las comunidades, con la Universidad de Bélice y la Universidad para el Bienestar Benito Juárez García. Pues aquí ya el material que les contaba, pues tenemos, ya empieza a tener una difusión mucho más amplia en varios países pues, de aquí del Gran Caribe. Como resultados, destacamos que el fortalecimiento de la capacidad local para la conservación y la gestión de los recursos por parte de menores, niños principalmente. Vemos que ahí es donde hay que hacer más esfuerzos con la comunidad infantil, los colegios, integrando pues estos conocimientos ancestrales, tradicionales, incluso pues de relación con las pesquerías. Ya vemos que es muy importante ese conocimiento. Queremos destacarlo como prioridad para pues, que sea una herramienta eficaz en sus proyectos. Entonces, como les decía, la comunidad guayú aquí en Colombia, en la región de La Guajira, pues ya cuenta con su primer material. Está relacionado con los manglares. Tenemos con los corales, otros ecosistemas. Bueno, en fin, queremos desarrollar aves, muchos más temas. Em, aquí pues desarrollamos estrategias adaptativas a los cambios climáticos, herramientas que ofrecen pues nuevos conocimientos cuando se integran nuevas llevan a cabo nuevas herramientas cuando se integran estos conocimientos, cosa que es lo que nosotros destacamos, ese saber integrado, nunca lo olvide, no nunca lo olvidemos, nos ha dado los mejores resultados pues en el tema de pesquerías. Entonces, ese conocimiento nunca se les olvide, por favor, estar incluido dentro de sus proyectos. Ahora bien, eh, como actividades educativas en los monitoreos, que ya a través de las capacitaciones que se han desarrollado con las comunidades, pues ya podemos ver que ellos están pues bien integrados a las actividades como de monitoreos, integración del conocimiento, la construcción de artes de pesca. Aquí pues hemos desarrollado una nueva estrategia de conservación y pues espero comentarles en nuevas reuniones que tengamos. Aquí dentro de los resultados, pues destacamos el impacto en los estudiantes, el fortalecimiento comunitario y el aporte a la sostenibilidad. Creemos que pues en estos temas tenemos pues de nuestros mayores resultados o los mejores. Ya, pues las comunidades, otra cosa que dentro del modelo biocultural que les presentamos es integrar pues ese conocimiento, nuevamente lo resalto. Quiero destacar que esas prácticas culturales nos dieron nuevas nuevos pasos para generar nuevas estrategias. Entonces, pues este conocimiento, todos estos resultados prácticamente son nuevos, pero vemos que las comunidades se apropian de estos temas y ahí es donde ya la comunidad pues desarrolla las investigaciones hoy en día prácticamente a través de estas nuevas herramientas. Entonces, muy contento con el modelo biocultural. Entonces, este demuestra ser una herramienta efectiva para cerrar la brecha entre el conocimiento tradicional y la ciencia formal, fomentando una entidad cultural fuerte y una curiosidad científica activa. Esto pues lo observamos a través de los colegios donde hemos ya integrado nuestro material educativo. Entonces, aquí nuevamente como recomendaciones, replicar adaptar a cada contexto. O sea, las comunidades pues son diferentes, a pesar de que los ambientes hablamos de manglares, corales, pastos, pues adaptemos esos conocimientos tradicionales a cada una de estas regiones. Eso es lo que nosotros les podemos recomendar. Es lo que vemos en México, aquí en Colombia y en muchos otros países de Centroamérica. Entonces, quiero pues dejarles las conclusiones y nuestras recomendaciones como pues aportes para sus nuevas propuestas de investigación a través de la integración de este modelo biocultural. Entonces, pues nuevamente agradecerles a todos y pues, bueno, no me quiero ir sin hacer estos llamados, ¿no? Entonces, a la comunidad científica que interese sus conocimientos, a los formuladores de políticas, tener en cuenta siempre este conocimiento ancestral y pues por lo que veía, conseguir más recursos a través de la integración de este conocimiento puede ser una buena estrategia. Ya hay más atención por parte de las entidades. Entonces, estas llamados a acciones, pues también las queremos reconocer y valorar estos saberes ancestrales no es solo una cuestión de justicia cultural, sino un pilar fundamental para lograr una gestión pesquera verdaderamente sostenible y resiliente en toda la región. Este mensaje, pues, no lo envía Hilario. Hilario Put, pues, es de la comunidad maya, un docente investigador que ya tiene un grupo, pues, muy consolidado en su región. Ojalá todos tengamos la oportunidad de conocerlo. Entonces, pues, ya para despedirme, agradecerles a todos, a Nayahuatl y sus preguntas, pues, muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Álvaro. Estamos sobre tiempo, pero podemos hacer una pregunta rapidita. ¿Alguien del público? ¿No? ¿No? No veo manos. Tal vez una rápida, muy, muy rápida. ¿Cuáles son como los principales retos para crear este tipo de documentos? Porque no es tan común verlo en la región, aunque sea tan importante.
Sí, lo dices de la forma que es un reto, porque pues estas personas pues están dentro de sus comunidades muy inmersas, conseguirlas es lo más complejo, pero sabes, hay algo que ellos después que conocen los proyectos están muy dispuestos a transmitir, a traducir, ellos son los traductores. Entonces, ya después ese material en sus colegios, en sus zonas de educativas, eh, ven con mucha alegría toda esa información nueva prácticamente de las investigaciones, de manglares, de corales, de pastos, de aves. Eso ya vemos que se apropia el conocimiento. La pregunta de las comunidades, ¿sabes? Los más veteranos, los que tienen como mucho más información que han recibido de generación en generación, ellos son los que generalmente están con nosotros, afortunadamente. Siempre hay que buscar a
Mayores.
los mayores, sí,
Sí, sí, sí.
ellos.
Ok.
Esa es una recomendación también que
Muchísimas gracias, Álvaro.
a ustedes.
Y bueno, aquí cerramos con este panel y en realidad felicidades a todos los presentadores. Congratulations to all the presenters as this is really valuable information here. Not everybody have the skills to develop this type of project. So congratulations and thank you. And I invite you to continue to the next panel and also to take a picture at the end.
Bueno, buenas tardes. Voy a coordinar la sesión, a moderar la sesión en español, que estamos en Colombia. Y es la última sesión de esta reunión. Me da mucho gusto verlos. Tenemos un buen público, sigue llegando. Es una sesión muy interesante. Así que bienvenidos a nuestra sesión de especies invasivas y sargazo. Bastante mixto los temas. Espero que tengamos unas buenas discusiones. Y con esto quiero invitar a Clive, por favor, para la primera presentación. Él nos va a llevar a las Islas Vírgenes Británicas para contarnos un poco de las especies invasoras marinas allá. Gracias.
Okay, good afternoon. The issue of invasives is certainly not new. Can you hear me?
No.
Hello? Oh, all right. I got to get right up to it, huh? Okay, well, as I said, certainly to this group, the issue of invasives is not new. It's a problem that we all face on no matter what island we're on. It's an issue that's going to get worse in the future. There's entire conferences on invasives, and it's something that's going to be occupying a lot of our attention in the future. And in the British Virgin Islands, one of the challenges that we have is that it's a small country, small land area, small population. So we just don't have enough people that are out there in the field looking to see what's there. In addition to my colleague, Shannon Gore, who's underwater most of the time, we have a relatively small number of dedicated people, some in government, in the Ministry of the Environment. We have some at the local community college, the National Park Trust, and in the private sector that are doing the best they can to keep on top of things, not just in the marine environment, but also, of course, on land. So let me think. So what do we know? The fact is that the invasives are a serious issue on all environments, and it's only going to get worse. And in the BVI, we just don't know the number of invasive species that are there. Invasives are usually well established when they're first detected. So most of the invasives are recent, although some, like the Indo-Pacific orange cup coral, has been in the region since the 1940s. So let me... Whoops. Just how do I scroll this up? This part up. Okay, great. All right. The invaders that we have, the marine invasives, include pathogens that affect corals. We've got algae and seagrasses, invertebrates of several phyla, and of course, fish. So how do the invasives get to the BVI? Well, the two primary dispersal pathways are ocean currents and transport by vessels. So as far as the ocean currents go, what we have is the British Virgin Islands as well as the U.S. Virgin Islands are on a shallow bank known as the Puerto Rican Bank. And so the primary ocean currents go from east to west, and the small shape and the distribution of the islands means that the currents go in a lot of different directions. So while the dominant current goes from east to west, around the islands, the currents often split. They form eddies and recirculating zones, especially on the leeward sides. The steep slopes and irregular coastlines cause upwelling, downwelling, or current acceleration along certain edges. Narrow passages like the Sir Francis Drake Channel create strong tidal jets that can result in current switching. So, the rapid reversal of the currents, as you can see, means that the currents can go back and forth. Then you have the trade winds that either amplify or counteract regional current flow, especially in shallow shelf or lagoonal areas. That means that the water goes left, right, up, down, every which way, and everything in the water, of course, goes with it. So the other main mechanism or way pathway for invasives to get to the BVI is through vessels. So we've got two kinds of vessels. We've got recreational vessels, which are generally the smaller sailboats, and then we have commercial vessels. Recreational vessels are the small sailboats that are common in the charter fleets and throughout their whole region. However, sailors often take long distance voyages and rallies. Some examples include from the map that you see, the World Cruising Club has what they call ARC, which is the Atlantic Rally for Cruisers. So you have sailboats from the Mediterranean, from England, France, different parts of Europe will gather, pass through Gibraltar down the coast of Africa and gather in the Canary Islands or the Cape Verdes. There they will assemble sometimes 300 or so and then take off across the Atlantic. Now, recreational vessels usually have pretty clean hulls. They keep the hulls obviously clean so they can sail faster. However, the bilges are great places for stowaways, and that, of course, happens. The other one is the Caribbean 1500, which it can be a couple of hundred sailboats will gather in the Chesapeake Bay and then sail down to the Caribbean. And of course, there's a lot of recreational vessels passing between Florida and the Eastern Caribbean. The British Virgin Islands is a classic example. And of course, there's very few invasives in South Florida, maybe one or two that might make it down. Commercial vessels, these obviously transit the entire globe. They include container ships, cargo vessels, or inter-island freighters, and they can transport invasives on the hull and also in the bilge. So recreational vessels generally are going over relatively short distances, which means that stowaways can go in the bilge a little more easily. Okay, a couple of examples. One is the Halophila, which was first identified in the BVI in 2014 and is now found around all the islands. So an example of what happens with them. So although it was first described in Grenada about 2002, it spread rapidly through the Caribbean, and it was first reported in 2014 in the BVI. It's known to displace native seagrasses, and it may pose a threat to juvenile reef fish dependent on the native seagrasses. The photo here shows a site called Deep Bay in Virgin Gorda. On the left, you see what it looked like previously. And in fact, a decade or so ago, I did surveys around this bay. I surveyed the entire shoreline and transects across. Maybe it was more than 10 years ago. I guess time flies when you're having fun. But it was a sand bottom, a few patch reefs, and a few clumps of grasses here and there. Then on the right, you see by 2019, how the area has been taken over. I could show you photographs of every other place in the BVI, just about the entire islands, all the bays are in a similar situation. So lionfish, this doesn't need any introduction to this group. While first established in Florida in 1980, they spread rapidly through the Western Atlantic, primarily by currents. First reported in the BVI in 2010, although we're quite certain they were there before. It's been well studied throughout the region with the impacts on juvenile reef fish. And actually, a recent study in St. Croix suggested the home range and movements have been underestimated, that the home range size may be 20 times larger than previously estimated. Controlling this fish has been a challenge. There's been an issue with trying to have derbies. It's kind of common in the Keys and other places where people shoot the lionfish and eat them. Here we're dealing with a question of potential ciguatera, which I'll talk more about in just a moment. And also spearfishing in the BVI is illegal. Although some years ago there was an NGO formed called Reef Guardians that did training and providing equipment for divers to spear the lionfish. Since then, the volunteers have removed probably or over 1,400 individuals, primarily at dive sites, although the ecological impacts and the effectiveness varies. So, controlling them. Unfortunately, most invasives are impossible to control once they're established. Dispersal pathways through ocean currents can't be mitigated. So the best option is to prevent initial colonization. Obviously, easier said than done. So for us, monitoring and identifying initial settlement may provide some control opportunities. So identifying the level of threat in case of lionfish is based on identification of lionfish hotspots. And that is being monitored through the ecosystems in the BVI, hopefully with results by the end of 2026. There's going to be ciguatera toxin testing through the University of the Virgin Islands. The idea is to take 100 lionfish from 33 sites, to assess if there's any hotspots for Ciguatera, and that's by the fall of 2026. Also to establish a basic catch data and a monitoring system for dive operators and fishers, and that is hopefully by March of 2026. Also, to do a rapid assessment of lionfish populations, and I think a rapid assessment of lionfish populations, and particularly looking for hotspots. That might be the best way to control them around popular dive sites where people are going to be more frequent. Conducting a Ciguatera risk assessment, that's pretty important, as many of you know. The prevalence of Ciguatera varies quite a bit through the region. The Virgin Islands happen to be a hotspot for Ciguatera. So testing for that toxin is more important. And that would obviously affect the recommendations for hunting or obviously consuming lionfish. Also, to teach handling safety and removal equipment distribution for divers to work at the hotspots, to develop a simple data logging system for catch and effort, and also for public awareness on invasives and sustainable seafood. The issue of invasives is one that is very serious in the Virgin Islands. And it's one that we're going to be dealing with for, unfortunately, for years to come. Thank you.
We have time for one quick question.
Yes. Thank you. That's very impressive. It's a big issue. Have you heard about this Eunomia stonolifera, this soft coral that is making very hard travels in Venezuela, that is not far away from all these islands from the Caribbean, in the UK, British island, the Eunomia stonolifera, maybe. This is a soft coral that is from, I think also from the Indo-Pacific in Venezuela, is just covering almost everything. So I think here we can take that awareness about that species and try to include that into the monitoring, because that could be very, very bad for the reefs. Thank you.
Well, I did. Yeah. I haven't, with a limited amount of time, we could I just selected one plant and one animal to talk about that people are familiar with. But if I could get my colleague, Shannon Gore, she would be able to answer more of your questions. Yeah. Hello, Shannon, you there somewhere? So, but yes, it's an issue for us, obviously. I think everywhere now.
Thank you, Clive.
Okay.
Bueno, vamos con nuestra segunda presentación con Adriana. ¿Está por aquí? Sí. Ella nos va a hablar un poco sobre un bivalvo invasivo en Colombia. Gracias.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I will present you this study, which is about this mussel Mitella stricata. Before it was called Mitella charruana. And is a study in the Colombian Caribbean, and is an evidence of ecological and biological invasion. So, me who is presenting, Adriana Osorno, I work in Invemar in the program of conservation. Invemar is in Santa Marta in Colombia. And my co-authors, Luis Chasky, Vanessa, Samuel, Mayra, and Juliana Sanchez. So this bivalve is a clan that is between the Mytilidae family. And before, as I told you, it was called Mytilus charruanus. And it used to live in marine, but especially in brackish waters. Here, we have the original description of this species, which is from, I took that from Biodiversity Heritage Library. If you don't know that website, I really recommend you because it's super special. There you will find all the natural illustrations of the naturalists from before. And I think it's very special. The base is in Belgium, in Brussels, and they really have the scan of the books of before between a physical place and then they put this in a web to everybody, no? So we can search and these kind of things. And this is Mitella strigata. This is the original description. It was from Henley in 1843. Here you can see it in the right. I circled that in a red. And you can see the original description of that. So here in Colombia, we saw this Bible since 2009, but this publication of 2009, the capture of this species was in 2007. I will show you a map later of the registering of the captures, but those are the publications. So the publications in a chronological order are like this one that you see here of Hillis et al. Of collaborators of 2009, then Mitella Charroana 2012, then encore une fois Mitella since 2013, and then we found it in the south of the Caribbean, really, really south of the Caribbean, Colombian Caribbean, in the Gulf of Urabá. Then I will show you a map of that. But then we also found it in the 2022 in the north of the Caribbean. So it have been spreading from the center to the borders of our country. So this study, we saw the first individuals, as I told you, in the south of the Caribbean. Here in the left, we have the Gulf of Urabá, which is next to Panama. It's very it's an area where rivers come. So it's not really marine, it's like estuary water. Here along of all the coast of the Colombian Caribbean, there are a lot of rivers coming to the sea, rivers that come from inside the country. So we have in too much areas storing water. Not only marine water as you will find in the general Caribbean islands. So we also saw these species in expedition of like a research expedition that we did in the north of the Caribbean beside Venezuela. So which is the other corner of the Colombian Caribbean. And that was the bay of Bahía Portete and Tucacas. The Bay of Tucacas is next to Venezuela, so we can see now that this species is in both corners of the Caribbean Colombian, and the first time that it was registered, it was in the center of the Colombian Caribbean, and is especially in coastal lagoons. In Colombia, we have a lot of coastal lagoons. They are estuarine, and this species is found there. So there is a controversial matter of the origin of the species, because there was one author, this Gillis, that I showed you before, that says the species was originally from here, but expert malacologists from here never saw it before. So this species is coming from the Indo-Pacific, and it was probably coming from ships that bring slaves and that in those times, like other kind of clams, like perna or perna viridis. There are other kind of invasive clams in South America, like this one. So this work was done in this coastal lagoon, Ensenada Rio Negro, which is a mangrove ecosystem. And we also searched in rocky shore ecosystems, and also we searched in artificial substrates. We did systematic sampling, and we searched musas in general from the family Mytilidae in all these coastal habitats that I'm telling you, but none in all of them. We didn't make systematic sampling in all of these places, but we recorded as well, and we choose 4 coastal rocky bottoms and 3 mangroves in this Ensenada Rio Negro coastal lagoon. Then we have this data sampling in the Ensenada Rio Negro. So in Ensenada Rio Negro, we took like 3 routes of mangroves in different sites, in different 3 site stations. And we took that into the laboratory. And in Rocky Shore, we made a sampling protocol that we used to make with a protocol with MBOM. It's like Marine Biodiversity Observation Network. There are these kind of protocols that you can use, and we implement that in Rocky Shores to try to find these species, because it's normally in the roots of mangroves, in every hard substrate that is available. So we took that to the lab. Then we made a morphological assessment and also a genetic assessment. And I'm talking you, and I will not bore you with that. But this is kind of output that we have from that. At the beginning, we have some specimens from those samples, and they were like general methylates. You will see them in laboratory, and they were very similar to each other. I'm used to work in malacology. They are really, they really. The appearance is, you will see it at your not expert art, you will think it's the same, but it's not. Then you will have Mitella strigata, Brachydontes exusis, Perna perna, and Perna viridis from all these sides. Then in the mangrove roots, we did find Mitella strigata. And in Rocky Church, we didn't. We found another species of methylate, which is Brachydontes exustus, which is native. And then we found 6 morphotypes in the laboratory of this same species. Like as I told you, we collected that, and everything looked the same. Not that much the morphotype 6 because it was really different, and I knew already it was Brachydontes exustus, but the morphotype 1 until 5, they have different forms and different patterns in the valve and different colors, and it looks just the same species if you see it, even in an eye of a malacologist. So this is was also shown in a paper of Lim in 2018, and they found also those different kind of patterns. So you see, if you can find this Mitella strigata in the Caribbean coastal lagoons, really search for it, because it may be there. It may be there, but you should probably take a sample and make a genetic analysis also to identification of that. So we make all these blast and genetic analysis. And we found Mitella strigata in the mangroves, in the roots of the mangroves, and we found Brachydontes exustus also in the roots of the mangroves, which is native species, and we found Brachydontes exustus in the rocky shores, which is the native species. We didn't find Mitella strigata in the rocky shores. And Mytilopsis salei, which is also in the roots of the mangroves. So the message is here is Mitella strigata is in the roots of mangrove, not we didn't find it in rocky shores. We made a tree. So here you found all these species that I have been talking about. As you see, they look to each other too much. Here are the number of the species that we really sequenced. And we can see that the first source of bibliography, it was in 2007. Then in 2008, in the center of the Colombian Caribbean. Then we can find this species at 2022 and 2023 in both corners of the Colombian Caribbean. So this exotic mussel, Mitella strigata, is reported from the first time in both extremes of the Colombian Caribbean coast, Gulf of Urabá and Tucacas Bay in La Guajira, during the years 2022 and 2023, respectively, extending to no distribution from entire continental coast 50 years after the first record in Cartagena. Among the Mitella strigata specimen collected, 5 morphotypes were found according to difference in shape, relief patterns, and coloration of the beds, evidencing a wide phenotypic variation that makes its recognition in situ difficult based solely on morphological characters, implying for this purpose the implementation for molecular techniques. Mitella strigata is established in the coastal marine area of Necoclí, Gulf of Ura, which is evident by its presence in various sectors, both in natural and artificial substrates, but mostly over the mangrove roots of the coastal lagoon Ensenada Rio Negro, and by the discovery of specimens with size between 0.3 and 3.5 centimeters in length, which suggests the presence of a reproductive population. And Mitella strigata was found over the mangrove roofs of Sucacas Bay, and there is a need of a systematic sampling and this site in the every coastal lagoon which we will found it in order to evaluate the composition and structure of the biological community. This community of mollusks of the mangrove roots at the coastal lagoon Ensenada Rio Negro. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, sorry, but we are.
Ensenada, wait. Okay. Includes native species such as the oyster Crassostrea and the Muses brachydontis and Mytilopsis alege. We are native species, and maybe there is a suggestion with this study of a competitive exclusion. So just to be aware. Thank you.
Un trabajo muy interesante. Desafortunadamente no tenemos tiempo para preguntas, pero los invito a que la contacten ahora durante el break o durante el resto de la tarde para seguir conversando sobre este tema. Muchas gracias, Adriana. Ahora vamos a un tema un poco diferente para hablar sobre el control del pez león en Belice. Fabián.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Fabian Kine. I'm a former PhD student with the University of the West Indies. And you're hearing me okay? Hi, good afternoon. My name is Fabian Kine. I'm a former PhD student with the University of the West Indies. And I'm here to talk to you today about some of the work we've been doing in Belize, looking at integrating socio-ecological strategies for lionfish control. So when you're dealing with invasions, the invasions are more difficult once a species is widespread. So the pace of invasion often outstrips resources available for control, which is especially challenging in small island developing states that lack the resources for effective management. So the interconnectivity and rapid colonization means that suppression strategies need to be implemented in the long term and over a wide geographic scale. One of the most widespread invasions is the red lionfish, Taurus volitans, which originated in the Indo-Pacific Ocean and was introduced into Florida in the mid-1980s through the aquarium trade. And a more nascent invasion has occurred in the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal. So it's important to recognize the interconnectedness of social and ecological systems when you're trying to design strategies for control. So this opened up a number of different interesting questions when we were looking at designing and working with a number of groups in Belize to think about how we could effectively manage the invasion. So the study focused on the Belize Barrier Reef, which is one of the most well-developed, largest and most diverse ecosystems in the Western Hemisphere, and provides unique context and setting point for studying invasive species. It is the second largest barrier reef in the world. It has over 2,500 small-scale fishes, areas of high biodiversity, and there's not that much data on the status and threat of lionfish. Also, improper management may impair conservation efforts. So it's important to, so there's a great opportunity to design effective and scalable implementation for management. One of the things that we worked on was the Belize Lionfish Management Strategy, which was established in 2019 with a number of key actors, including the government, MPA managers, local community members, and private sector. And this set out a vision to adaptively manage lionfish in a participatory manner to protect and improve livelihoods for all Belizeans and the health of Belize's marine environment. A key objective of this work was to develop a long-term monitoring program to suppress lionfish in high priority areas, including juvenile fish habitats and marine protected areas, with the ultimate goal to make the most effective use of limited resources for control. So part of this work was to develop an indicator-based framework. Part of this work was to develop an indicator-based framework that combines ecological and social data to prioritize sites for lionfish suppression and evaluate management in Belizean marine reserves. And this opened up a number of interesting questions when we were looking at designing an adaptive monitoring program. This includes how many lionfish to remove, how much effort is required, what areas should be prioritized. One of our core sites was the Turnef Atoll Marine Reserve, which is one of the best developed atolls in the Maar region, over 1,500 square kilometers and surrounded by barrier reef and rich biodiversity. So there's 2 fish spawning aggregation sites. It also has some of the most productive lobster fishing grounds in Belize, and it's co-managed by the government of Belize and the Turnef Atoll Sustainability Association, who are doing a fantastic job managing this resource. So we started by assessing the invasion. So we collected data over a 2-year period using the lionfish focused search survey method, which is a belt transect that is regionally known for looking at the invasion and coral reef health impacts. This project also was underpinned by a much broader intervention across Belize, supporting 7 different MPAs and MPA managers to establish a scalable model for effective lionfish control and adaptive management. It included training in scuba diving, first aid, and lionfish survey training, and established lionfish brigades with community members with rangers to support monitoring and control activities. The first question we were looking at was how much lionfish should we remove from the area? So we adapted a model that was developed by Stephanie Green in 2014, looking at ecological thresholds. And this combined surveys of fish biomass, predation rates, and lionfish density and body sizes. So the model so we use this model to calculate the threshold or tipping point between the rate at which lionfish consume prey and the rate at which new prey biomass is created. And by linking invasive population levels to ecological drivers, we developed quantitative targets to suppress invasive populations below the levels that cause ecological damage. And this concept is known as functional eradication. This approach was first field tested in the Bahamas on Bahamian patch reefs over a 2-year period. The results showed that effective control is achievable through suppression to site-specific thresholds. We work with a number of key stakeholders to use survey data, the model outputs, and other management information, such as logistical information on how accessible the sites were, looking at the fisheries and tourism value and access, value and the different actors that were working in the reserve to guide suppression efforts and site selection. And we developed a set of priority indicators collaboratively through a participatory process to determine where to plan interventions within the reserve. The program was implemented over 2 years, with a brigade conducting at least 8 site visits per quarter. This just shows the full framework that was developed with the 5 steps. So the first was to assess the invasion status. Second is to define objectives and build capacity. The third looked at modeling density thresholds and identifying indicators. And the fourth was to implement and evaluate control. And the fifth is the final step is to modify those goals based on the results that you're seeing. So what did we see? Well, at baseline, lionfish density was over threshold in the reserve in both back reef and forereef ecosystems, in both the no-take zone and the general use area. And we found highest lionfish populations in the no-take zone forereef, suggesting that this area was acting as a refuge for lionfish and counteracting the recovery efforts that these areas were set up to protect. Over a 2-year period, 430 lionfish were removed from the system, and across 10 priority sites, we found that invader density was declining steadily in both the general use and no-take zone, with an overall reduction in 90% observed over the time period. We also found that prey fish populations were starting to rebound, with a 5-fold increase observed from the baseline. This slide shows the overall system level of INTERNF across the 3 years. And what you can see is that over the 3-year assessment, TERNF et al., there's been a big improvement in sites under threshold, i.e. lionfish populations that not at levels to sustain ecological damage. So in 2020, 54% were under threshold, and in 2022, 87% were under. So this is a big change based on those management interventions. So how do ecological and social indicators respond to suppression? Well, we've seen positive trends across almost all indicators, and then we use the framework to identify where to plan and inform future removals, with only 20% of sites now showing lionfish, and 5 of those exceeding threshold. So in terms of main takeaways from this work, we recognize that prioritizing using socio and ecological indicators helped us focus effort where it matters most. We were able to target high density sites where full eradication is no longer realistic when you're working in the marine environment. Reefs can sustain moderate lionfish levels once prey fish rebound, and functional eradication can support reef recovery. This approach is adaptive and is important. It's important that you tailor it locally to the needs and priorities of each marine reserve. This sets out a replicable model for suppression of invasive species, and the work also, some of the work that we were involved in Belize also related to encouraging commercial markets and market-based suppression, and a paper was published earlier this year if you'd like to read to learn more. We also the framework was incorporated into a national removal policy that is now implemented in Belize and engages fishers and tourism in participatory management. Finally, all of this work, including the insights from the Western Atlantic, has been shared with other governments, other collaborators, other people working at this in different regions. So this supported insights to other people working in the Mediterranean, in Brazil, on new and emerging invasions. So thanks so much. I just want to thank my partners, my funders, my collaborators that made this work possible, and it's happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Tenemos tiempo solo para una pregunta.
That was a nice talk with sort of a positive ending. But I noticed on one slide that everything was like an improvement except lionfish are now bigger. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think I was showing the different indicators that we were monitoring, and in TNF it did show that we started to see bigger lionfish, and I think a lot of that's related to the connectivity of the deeper reef sites that then use TNF as the lionfish migrate to TNF and use some of the 4 reef sites as refuges. So yeah, it was definitely something that was interesting that we found. And when we looked in other MPAs, we didn't see that correlation. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Fabian. Bueno, nos estamos acercando al cierre de la conferencia. Tenemos 2 presentaciones muy buenas sobre el sargazo, sobre distintos aspectos del sargazo. Así que vamos a ir con la primera sobre los temas de electroquímica. Y para eso la presentación la va a hacer Diana.
Hi everyone, I'm Diana Benufé. I work at Roots of the Sea NGO in Martinique, and I'm going to present you a part of my PhD thesis I already done. It's on the influences of Sargassum stranding on carbon steel and with electrochemical approach. So for a little context, Sargassum influxes, so when Sargassum mat it's in open water, it's considered like floating jungles. It's inhabited from fish, turtle, and other marine fauna. And when this mat reach the coastline, they decompose and release some component like gases like ammoniac or hydrogen sulfide. And there's some effects, this gas has some effect on the health, environment, and economy, tourism, etc. So the main question of my PhD was how do Sargassum species influence marine corrosion of stills immersed in French West Indies coasts. We have three objectives: study the behavior of stills, depending on Sargassum mass density, determine the kinetics of corrosion, and characterize the markable community of mature biofilm. I'm going to present you just for the result for just one of steel is carbon steel, but I start with a method. We have two sites along Martinique coastline. The first one was the Marigot Harbor. It's Sargassum plus because there's a lot of decomposed Sargassum on site. And the second one was Cosme Bay. It was a site where there is no decomposed Sargassum. So we use some coupon of carbon steel. It's a non-resistant steel to corrosion, but it's still used in it's all usage for tools and etc. And the dimension of the coupon was 40 by 25 millimeters. And it was chemically clean before each immersion. And there is some immersion period from 0 to 60 days. They was immersed in the tidal zone, allows the coupon state always immersed in seawater, like in the picture on the left. I'm going to present you some research already published. We monitoring for the influence of abiotic factor. We monitoring some pH, temperature, and redox potential with a frequency from 0 to 120 days. And we observe at Sargassum plus, where there is some decomposed Sargassum, the pH is more acidic. There is a low dissolved oxygen too. It's favorable to anaerobic bacteria. And there is some reductive potential. We think about because of decay in organic matter, there is some release of H2S and reduce the potential. So we conclude that this site, Sargassum plus, is more corrosive for steels. And we go to influence of biotic factors. We to evaluate this influence, we use some microscopy techniques with confocal, with some staining, bacterial community analysis, and culture or isolation of bacteria from steel, seawater, and Sargassum. And we found some genera, in biocorrosion like Decipherobio, Dephilobacter. And we conclude also that this same site is good for biocorrosion too. We made some surface analysis too to know about what corrosion projects we can find on corrode coupon, steel coupon, and we have done some scanning microscopy with EDS for the mapping of the composition of the surface, and some X-ray diffraction to identify the composition, what we can find on the surface. Not surprised, it's at Sargassum plus, where is some decomposed Sargassum. We found the most degraded coupon. And we found also some elemental sulfur, and we think about some biological cycle with the intervention of some sulfur oxidizing bacteria. And there is a project characterized when you have some corrosion. It's iron sulfide, and we doesn't find iron sulfide in the both site. So we estimate also the corrosion rate with weight loss method. For the reference in the literature, we have 1 millimeter per year in seawater for carbon steel. And at Sargassum Plus, we can have up to 9 millimeter per year for the corrosion rate compared to the Sargassum minus, where there is no decaying algae. There is 1.4 millimeter per year. After all this conclusion, we think about the mechanism, and we use some electrochemical techniques, to know what's happened. So for these techniques, we use a potential star. We use a 3 electrode cell connect to a potential star with 3 electrodes. The rocking electrode was our coupon on the on site. The reference is a calomel saturate electrode and a counter electrode in platinum. And the liquid was seawater at the same time we sample the coupon on site. And the method we use is electrochemical impedance spectroscopy. It's a method allowed to separate slow and fast phenomena during sinusoidal disturbance of the potential of a range of frequencies with an amplitude of 5 millivolts. It's a non-destructive method. And we can have 2 types of diagrams, Nyquist, we can see on the top, and the board diagram below. For just little schema for the circuit, we can model the surface of the coupon. It's a circuit with 3 parameters with electrolyte resistance, with charge transfer resistance correspond to exchange of charge between the coupon and electrolyte and corrosion projects. And also there is a double layer capacity with a coefficient of derivation because the corrosion project layer is heterogeneous. So for the result, for the Sargassum minus is a site with no decaying algae. We can see some biofilm on the surface of the coupon on the top. And there is a diffusion start at from 50 days to 60 days. And we think about is because it's when upper the layer of the corrosion projects and the biofilm. And there is a decrease of the impedance from the 0 to 60 days that correspond to the decrease of the resistance of the metal, so corrosion of the metal. And on the other side, we can see also diffusion start at 7 days. And we can see some biofilm on the surface, but there is a switch between 15 and 30 days. So we can see some pure diffusion for Sargassum minus. Compared to Sargassum plus, there is no pure diffusion because the coefficient it's over 0.5, and is maybe because the porous layers and no adherence of the corrosion products. But we can conclude that the corrosion for the broth site is controlled by diffusion phenomena. So to conclude, Sargassum influxes affect the broth site differently, but in Sargassum plus, there is more favorable condition for marine corrosion than Sargassum minus. And corrosion kinetics appears similar at both sites, but there is some difference of the division between the two sites, and we can see also elemental sulfur only at Sargassum plus. So the sentence for sum up is the more Sargassum algae decompose, the higher is the risk of still corrosion in coastal and marine ecosystem. So we need to manage the Sargassum shrinkage within 48 hours. So I need to thank the team of the laboratory where I work. Also, the Marine Institute for the funding allow me to be here. And the NGO where I work like scientific project officer. And we have a focus on marine ecosystem and with a lot of axes and some mangrove restoration project. And thank you.
Thank you, Diana. We do have time for questions. Don't be afraid. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bueno, nuestra última charla, muy interesante también, sobre sargazo, nos la va a presentar Geraldine. Bienvenida, Geraldine.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to be here today, and especially now at the last presentation of the session. My name is Geraldine Cartwright, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Specially Protected Area and Wildlife Regional Activity Center of the Cartagena Convention. So today I will share you how our work give a voice to biodiversity and sensitive coastal ecosystem in the context of Sargassum inundation across the wider Caribbean regions. So this presentation will walk you through three main parts. First, the institutional framework of the Cartagena Convention. Second, the structure and objectives of the SPO protocol. And finally, how these mechanisms support countries in integrating biodiversity conservation and coastal resilience into response and to Sargassum inundation. So to begin, I would like to present the context of the Cartagena Convention and the SPO protocol, and then I will show you how the convention has supported contracting party in the managing Sargassum inundation. The Cartagena Convention is the only legally binding agreement, regional agreement, designed to protect the marine environment in the wider Caribbean region. And this has been ratified by 28 countries and is supported by 3 technical protocols: the oil spill protocol, the land-based source of marine pollution protocol, and the specially protected area and wildlife protocol. These 3 protocols establish additional obligations for the protection of the Caribbean environment, and each is supported by a dedicated regional activity centers that support technical work and provides assistance to contracting party. The SPO protocol has been ratified by 19 countries, representing 27 territories and diversity that reflects both the ecological richness and the political complexity of our region. The protocol covers more than 300 species and recognizes 39 protected areas shown on the map in blue. And its main goal is to promote the long-term conservation and sustainable use of coastal and marine biodiversity through regional cooperation, improved management of protected area, conservation of threatened and endangered species, and support for other regional and global biodiversity agreements and commitments. So the SPO works is guided by a structured governance system, the Conference of Parties, the COP, and its scientific and technical advisory committee stack met every 2 years. The national focal point who represents the contracting parties adopt a biennial work plan covering all major topics under the convention and the protocol, including protected area, endangered species, and the protection of coastal and marine ecosystem. These meetings are also attended by observers from civil society and scientific organizations who contribute expertise and perspective to the discussion. And when countries have questions that require complex technical or scientific assessments, they mandate one of the 4 SPO working groups to conduct analysis and produce advisory reports. So these reports are then submitted for review and adoption at the following stack and COP. I know it's a little bit complex, but... And so at the 12th conference of the party in Aruba in 2026, contracting party took key decision to strengthen regional cooperation on the issue of Sargassum inundation. They encouraged the Secretariat and the SPORAC to improve knowledge and support party in tackling the environmental and socio-economic consequences of Sargassum inundation. They also mandated the Sargassum Working Group, composed of 20 experts and chaired by the SPORAC, to survey the needs of contracting parties and to examine how this Sargassum inundation may affect their implementation of the SPO protocol, the Cartagena Convention, and the LBS protocol. Based on the survey and regional consultation, the working group was tasked with drafting a Sargassum action plan and with proposing a definition of Sargassum inundation. So in response to this mandate, the SPO and Cartagena Convention Sargassum Working Group developed a questionnaire and surveyed all contracting parties. The goal was to identify national needs in managing Sargassum inundation and to understand how these events may affect the implementation of their obligation under the LBS SPO and Cartagena Convention. So the main impact of Sargassum inundation on the implementation of the Cartagena Convention, identified by signatory countries due to the presence of large quantity of decomposing Sargassum trapped near the coast and on the coast, concern the management of protected areas, the pollution of natural environments, the destruction of habitat, the impact on the protection of listed species and their habitats, and the restriction of the movement of listed species, as well as the degradation of seawater quality. The main needs identified by the signatory countries in order to deal with Sargassum inundation and their impact on the implementation of the Cartagena Convention are the development of management plan, build knowledge for a better understanding of the ecological impact of Sargassum management measures, such as beach cleaning or the use of floating barriers, etc. Develop knowledge for a better understanding of the multiple ecological impact of Sargassum inundation, and develop scientific and technical collaboration, develop demonstration project aimed at reducing marine pollution, create appropriate guidelines for environmental impact assessment, identify the source and type of pollution, enable states and organizations to access sufficient funding resource, and help them budget for Sargassum management, and finally, assess and monitor environmental quality and impact. So based on this survey, the SPO and more largely Cartagena Convention Working Group developed a Sargassum action plan to enhance regional cooperation and capacity for managing Sargassum inundation. It includes 5 components: cooperation and governance, to strengthen cooperation between the SPO and LBS protocol and regional agency, and facilitate coordination among government organizations at the national and subnational level, and strengthen link with the private sector research in order to facilitate and support scientific research to address current priority gaps in knowledge to better contribute to the management of Sargassum inundation, responses in promoting Sargassum inundation response best practices and capacity building based on scientific evidence, adaptive management, and local knowledge, communication and awareness, to increase awareness, knowledge, and understanding about the impact of Sargassum inundation in the wider Caribbean, and finally, sustainable financing in order to enhance access to sustainable financing resources for Sargassum research and response by contracting party, other stakeholder, and the Cartagena Convention Secretariat. So together, this aim to strengthen coordination, fill knowledge gaps, and promote best practices, raise awareness, and secure long-term funding for Sargassum management. The very good news is that just last week during the COP, the Cartagena COP, the Cartagena COP officially validated and approved this action plan. This is a major step forward, and they request the implementation of this action plan in the region. So you understand that the influx of Sargassum is therefore a major regional challenge, affecting all Caribbean countries and territories, and governments have limited capacity, resources, and knowledge to effectively manage this problem. That is why the Sargassum 2 project was developed to fill this gap by enhancing understanding of Sargassum issue, providing tools and knowledge for decision-making, and promoting regional cooperation to manage biodiversity impacts. The Sargassum 2 project ran for 3 years, from 2025 to 2028, with a total budget around €6 million. And the project includes 6 work packages, ranging from coordination, monitoring, to research on Sargassum collection, valorization, and ecological impact. The overall goal is to ensure a coordination and sustainable management of Sargassum across the region. So within this framework, and the SPURWAC play a leading role in strengthening biodiversity considerations through international cooperation, impact studies, and the development of new monitoring tools integrating biodiversity layers. Our goal is to ensure that Sargassum management